Not every survival horror game follows the same rules. Some have limited saves, some don't. Some have inventory limits, some don't. But one thing we tend to think of as universal is scarcity of resources, and how that impacts our combat decisions. In this video, I want to talk about why this has become an expected feature of the genre, and why some people think it shouldn't be. In recent years, we have seen a resurgence of survival horror. AAA titles like Resident Evil 7, the RE2 remake, the Silent Hill 2 remake. Meanwhile, the independent scene is exploding with new and original modern classics like Signalis, Tormented Souls, Amnesia the Bunker, Crow Country. So many inspiring entries in our beloved genre. And every time one of these games comes out, critics and people like myself who really focus on the side of gameplay tend to concern ourselves with just how strict the game is with ammunition and healing items. We have this idea that survival horror means you should be feeling pretty starved for resources, and the newer games themselves play into that expectation. Playing on the highest difficulty in the newer Resident Evil titles, or Silent Hill, or Signalis, or whatever it is, offers an experience with fewer available resources. Maybe they're more rare to come across, maybe each ammo box is worth less. They do something to create that feeling of, damn it, I think I should save my ammo here so I don't end up screwed later. But where does that expectation come from? Why is survival horror partly defined by resource scarcity? One could argue that, unlike the very real presence of map exploration, inventory limits, and puzzle solving, resource scarcity is entirely an invention of the fanbase. One could argue that, with evidence to support it that I will be presenting, but I also don't agree with that take, and I'll do my best to explain why I think it's inaccurate. It has to do with memory versus reality. Many people remember those classic survival horror games of the 90s, keeping them in a constant state of resource starvation. They remember trying to sneak around zombies so they don't waste bullets. They remember getting to a boss fight and running out of bullets so they just have to reload an old save to replay the game better up to that point. They remember limping around slowly for 20 minutes in Resident Evil 2 because they didn't have a health item. And it's not just the casual, common players that remember those feelings. It's the critics then and now who had the same experience. But was that experience created by the games themselves or the players? The fact is, if you go back and play Resident Evil 1, the amount of health and ammo you can find is actually ridiculous. The same goes for RE2, RE3, Silent Hill 1. If you're a competent explorer and you play those old games, you will be drowning in shotgun shells, rifle rounds, whatever you need to easily mow down every enemy in the game. This is how you can argue that survival horror was never about resource management, that it was always a genre where you were supposed to be murdering everything in your path instead of avoiding combat when possible. And it's a strong piece of evidence, but I think it's missing important context. When these games first came out, no one knew how to play them. People wandered around lost, they didn't find a good deal of the available resources. If they did, their inventory management was bad, so they couldn't carry enough of what they found. They were dealing for the first time with clunky tank controls that led them to taking a lot of damage and missing their shots. And while veterans of the genre may have no problem with fixed camera and tank controls now, back in the 90s, playing something like that for your first time was a difficult adjustment for some people, especially considering so many of them were just little kids. So even if those old games do technically offer more than enough ammo and health to never feel desperate, that simply isn't the experience that the vast majority of people had when these games were first introduced to the world, for all the reasons I just stated. It was genuinely experienced, so much so that those who went on to make their own survival horror games years later did their best to recreate that experience by focusing harder on resource scarcity and giving veteran players what they crave, which is to feel the way they felt the first time. Because survival horror simply plays more interestingly if the player has to make decisions. If you want to save ammo, you'll need to avoid enemies. Avoiding enemies means parts of the map remain dangerous to pass through, which changes the route you'll take on a map when you need to backtrack, which means the game designers need to design an interesting map with smart connectivity. Everything works together. If the game just loads you with resources and you're never scared or cautious, a lot of what makes this genre fun falls apart. In my experience, as a kid I played the first Resident Evil so much that by the time RE2 came out, I was so good at the style of game it was that I just breezed through it. I love RE2, but not once did it ever have me feeling tense or cautious about my resources. Same goes for RE3. It's a more tense game, but you have a lot of resources. The balance is pretty off if you're looking for the survival part of survival horror. But if any of those old titles is your first survival horror game, you probably remember them differently. I wish those older games were actually more challenging when it comes to this topic. For modern replay value, I wish they had more difficulty settings. And that's what we see in the newer titles. Studios know that some people are here for their first time, but others have been here for 30 years. I'm happy they're accommodating both, but many just don't go far enough. Any studio making a game in this genre should recognize that there are a lot of people who desperately crave that starvation feeling. It's a shame that something as good as Chronos: The New Dawn locks off its hard mode and doesn't have anything higher than that. It's sad that the Dead Space remake doesn't have a zealot difficulty like Dead Space 2. It's disappointing that Amnesia: The Bunker is one of the only survival horror titles that lets you customize how many resources you'll find when you play. I think I should stop here. I feel like I'm rambling now. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you want to see more survival horror stuff, take a peek around the channel. Thanks, bye.